Hello and welcome to A Novel Idea, the show where we interview authors. I am Noelle Boc, your host, and today we have with us, and welcoming back, Luna McNamara. Welcome back, Luna.
Thank you. It is great to be here. This is a phenomenal show, and it's lovely to talk to you again.
Yes, I'm very excited to have you again as well. And you have, it's not quite out yet, right? We only have, what, like 10 days or something?
Yep, April 21st, The Witch and the Huntress drops.
Yeah, so we're very excited. So now your first book, Psyche and Eros, was a Greek mythology retelling. And this also...
Yes, this is another dive into Greek mythology. I knew for my second book I wanted to do something a little bit different. I wanted to really tell kind of a darker and more complex story. I also wanted to tell a love story that wasn't as neatly linear as the one in Psyche and Eros. But The Witch and the Huntress is, among other things, a retelling of the Argonautica, which is, I don't know if you remember the 1960s, Ray Harryhausen, Jason and the Argonauts, but it's the story of Jason's journey to get the Golden Fleece and win back his father's throne. But I'm really interested in the women in the story. But let's see. Yeah, so retelling of the Argonautica, and I like to think of it as, you know, Madeline Miller's Song of Achilles meets Chappell Roan's Good Luck Babe. That's how I've been describing it to people.
That's a good way to describe it, actually. I approve of that kind of description of the story. So yeah, so in this one you do 3 points of view. Mm-hmm. So you have Jason, who's the typical male hero. Well, he's not actually a typical male hero.
Yeah, he's kind of a funny one. We'll get back to him later, but he's kind of the garnish on the story. It's really about Atalanta and Medea.
Right, yeah. So you have Atalanta's point of view and you have Medea's point of view. And I think it's very interesting that you kind of do the point of views where Jason's more third person, but you do differently with the women. And then you know, we start obviously with Medea and where she comes from, it's funny because I think I knew more about Atalanta and Jason than I knew about Medea, even though I know there's other works and stuff about her out there, but I think I knew less about her overall storyline. So I was really engaged in just like learning more about her and like what happened, where she came from and where she went to. And of course, she's the witch of the story.
Exactly, yeah. Well. She's the royal daughter of King Aeetes, who's the king of Colchis and kind of this great tyrant. But Medea is such a fun character because she is this, or at least starts the story as this rather innocent, lonely young girl who also happens to command these incredible witchcraft powers where she can transform creatures, bring the moon into the midday sky, accomplish all of these marvels, but also she's incredibly isolated and lonely. Her father is a tyrant, she's not allowed to leave, and so when she meets Jason, who wants to get the Golden Fleece owned by her father, the two of them strike a deal. All right, I'll get you Dad's Golden Fleece if you get me out of here. But I think a relationship based on what you can get out of each other isn't a particularly solid relationship. What? Shocking, right? So it's really when she meets Atalanta that things click more. And you'd mentioned having more of a feel for Atalanta. I definitely did too. She played a pretty big role in Psyche and Eros, and I loved writing her character because she's this fascinating combination of brash self-confidence and vulnerability, and she's able to survive in the wilderness, but also anything to do with human society just baffles her. So Atalanta is very fun to write in general, but when she and Medea meet each other, at first they don't seem to have much in common, but there's a moment when they click and say, "Oh, you're like me. I'm finally able to relate to someone who understands what I've been through." And that's the seed of their connection.
Yes, yes. And say, like, I really loved how you grew that, because they understand in the beginning, they're like, what do I have in common with this person, except that you're also a woman.
Yeah, you're the only other woman on the crew. All right, I guess we'll like hang out.
Yeah, right. It's very much like that in the beginning. And then, and then they develop an actual friendship, and other things over time. I don't want to spoil too much what happens in the storyline. I mean, I guess, well, I say, like, and you take things, one of the things I really appreciate about you, particularly, and your writing is, and I was kind of saying to our producer earlier, is that, I've read plenty of Greek mythology retellings. There's, a bunch of them out there and such, but like yours go deeper, I feel like, because I know you are like a student of the history of the mythology, and you really delve deeply into the material, like these source material pieces. And so I like that you are digging out like some other bits and pieces that I think some others are not going that far as you do in it. So I really appreciate like that extra level.
I think that's I was originally going to be an academic. I got my master's from Harvard Divinity School and then realized I just didn't want to specialize in the way that academia requires. But I am definitely part of that academic to fanfic writer to traditional publishing pipeline.
Right.
I have familiarity with these sources. I've dug deep. I also want to write my cute romance where the goth girl and the jock get together.
Just fantastic.
Exactly.
Which is fantastic. Talk a little bit about Jason and what you decided to do with Jason's character.
Yes. Oh, Jason, he's so funny. So even in the source text, Apollonius Rhodius's Argonautica, which is written in the Hellenistic era, so like around 500 before the Common Era, possibly a little later. But Jason is just such a funny character because in contrast to the older heroes from the Homeric epics, like the Iliad and the Odyssey, Jason's power isn't speed or strength, it's friendship. Jason is able to make connections with people and to win them over to his cause more through diplomacy than through strength of arms. And some scholars have thought that this was Apollonius creating a new hero for a new age. In the Hellenistic era, diplomacy was much more important than strength at arms. You had to be able to argue your point, to engage rhetoric, to pull people in. And yet at the same time, even in the source texts, even in the ones that are sympathetic to Jason, he's kind of a goofball. He's a little bit of a nebbish. Like there's this scene where all the other warriors on the Argo are leaping off the side of the ship to fight this battle on the beach. And the text explicitly says, Jason's the last one to do that. When he finally gets his paws on the golden fleece, he puts it on and prances around while Medea's in the corner basically saying, hey, we need to deal with this guardian dragon that's menacing us right now. So there's something always a little goofy about him. But in writing The Witch and the Huntress, it was really funny because his perspective really took over at a certain point. And my editors were actually the ones to say, hey, maybe this could use less Jason. And immediately I said, oh, you're right, that's really not the story I want to tell. But sometimes when you let the characters get up in your mind and speak, strange things can happen. And he is the type who likes to control a conversation. So I had to really dial his point of view back. I found myself writing his chapters in the present tense, whereas Atalanta and Medea were past tense. And this is largely because the present tense is a very uncertain place to live in. You don't really have a past to look back upon, you're just stuck in the moment. And that's very Jason. He's always a little on edge, always trying to put a good face on things, always trying to pretend. And his relationship with Medea, there is some tenderness there. He wants to see her happy. She's been sad so much of her life. He's got to be a good husband. But Jason's desire to be a good person doesn't always line up with his ability to be one.
Right. And I think, you know, like a lot of the, when you're describing the relationship, like they have a 20-year marriage.
They have a 20-year marriage, they have 20-year kids.
Marriage, they have kids, you know, that it's becomes perfunctory, right, over time. But neither one of them really understands how to be, right, like in a healthy relationship that requires actual give and take and closeness. You know, they're just kind of like, all right, you know, we're doing the things you're supposed to do, but we're not actually happy. We're just kind of trudging along.
Exactly.
And that, you know, and Jason, he's like, well, I made this vow, and, you know, I said I was going to do this thing, so I'm going to do this thing. And it starts like where they do actually have some affection and interest in each other, and then it like devolves over time, which is, you know, not an unusual occurrence, as we know in general anyhow. But I kind of appreciated that perspective of, you know, because I mean, if you read the shorter versions of a Jason and the Argonauts, you're going to read like, oh, Jason's like a golden boy, right? The golden fleece, and like, oh, and the Argo, and oh, yes. And then you kind of go, you know, if you actually settled down after that, and to have a woman, like, and I think the other thing that was always striking to me too is you have Medea, who, as you were saying earlier, like has this immense powers, right? These really strong powers. And then she diminishes herself to basically become just this regular old housewife, you know, for his sake. And you know, granted, she does some pretty scary things. That
she's not a soft, cuddly person.
She's not like, she seems like she's going to be soft and cuddly, and then she's like, well, you know what? I have this idea. Like, let's do this really kind of disturbing piece of witchcraft.
Oh yes.
Yes, and then. Then everyone's like, oh, I didn't see that coming, you know?
Yeah, and some of that's her own background of being raised with this horrible tyrant father who uses violence as a tool. You don't necessarily escape that.
Right.
And part of the book, like there's the romance element of the book, which is a large part of it. But I think another part is about parents and children and about separating yourself from a parent who was controlling and toxic, and how that can open a new stage in your life. Both Atalanta and Medea face this. They have, in slightly different ways, they have fathers who try to exploit them. Medea's father really likes having this intimidating witch daughter, so he won't ever let her leave his kingdom. And Atalanta, later in her life, when she reconnects with the father who abandoned her in the wilderness, he wants to marry her off, and so she throws down the gauntlet of, I'm not going to marry anyone who can't beat me in a foot race. But Jason, and Jason's mother tries to do something similar, where she wants to use her son as an instrument of revenge against the man who killed her husband, Jason's father. But Atalanta and Medea are able to separate themselves from that and then grow as people. And Jason struggles with it a lot more. I won't get into the details. Don't want to spoil too much.
Spoil too much. I mean, I feel like I kind of like appreciated this, like sort of like a longer picture of these characters than like you get from, you know, like I said, like Atalanta and the golden apples. I mean, I knew that story from when I was a kid, right? Like I read that in the Book of Myths, and that's kind of just ends there. Like, you know, she marries the guy. He tricked her a little bit, but you know, she marries the guy. No, that's it. That's all. That's
what
it.
led to it? What came from it? Like, that isn't necessarily answered in those.
Right, and like, and would she actually be happy with the guy who tricked her? You know.
Yeah, no, that's always a question I've always wondered. So that was something I was also interested to explore in this as well.
It's like girl raised by bears, and then like, sure, I'll.
It's like,
threw some apples.
What's going on here? What's happening?
And I liked where you took that. I mean, maybe I won't spoil that exactly, all the pieces of that too. But I liked, you know, who that character, Melanion, right? Like I liked, you know, where you went with that character as well. I think that was a nice twist on things and gave it a fresh feel to it, and made it feel contemporary, even though we're in the past as well. And it's like, and we don't know. And I think the good point that you kind of put in the notes in the back too is like mythology. This was all written by men, right? And so men are centered most of the time, and we maybe should be happy with as many women as we do have in there. He's nodding at me, but you know, that we're able to parse out these stories and be able to, that you're able to like look at it kind of freshly and say, like, you know, this could have been the storyline that was happening. Just because it's not written down doesn't mean it didn't happen.
Yeah,
you know?
And I was inspired to write this by a passage from Diodorus Siculus's Library of History, which describes Medea healing Atalanta after a battle on the Argos journey. And this was something that kind of stuck in my head and made me wonder, what led to this? What came from this? What was the context? Was this part of a wider relationship that never interested the chroniclers writing the stories? And 90% of ancient literature is lost. We are panning for gold amidst the ruins.
Yeah, which is sad.
Yeah.
You know, but there's so much good gold in there.
Exactly. Like what we've got is incredible.
Yeah, it's great.
But, you know, I wanted to, like, you had mentioned diving in deeply to the myths, and that's something I do really try to do, and think about these characters not as names in a book or figures from mythology, but as living, breathing people. And what would it be like to be them? What would it be like to be abandoned by your father, raised by bears in the wilderness, fostered by these hunters, in the case of Atalanta, and to never really feel at home with yourself, not really understand if you're part of the human world or if you're part of the wilderness, and to have these questions of identity that shape your life's trajectory.
One of the things I wanted to mention too, just as talking about your deeper dives that you go into with these for the mythology too, is I really appreciate when I'm reading your descriptive passages, just like, because you just throw in, and I just know that you've researched it. That's why I like it particularly, is that you'll talk about like the food or things that should have been at that time period, what things might have looked like, and so I notice them because I think just I really enjoy your writing style in general. I just think you have a really nice style. But I was really appreciating when you were choosing to describe something that, because I know you from before, that I know that you're not just throwing in something that I'm like, oh, she like looked into and said like they would have had this.
And they're never going to be eating potatoes because potatoes didn't arrive in Europe until after the 1400s. So no one eats potatoes, those didn't exist yet. But there are a lot of little things where, one thing I love is thinking about the very practical dimensions of fantasy things. So for example, Heracles, like great, strong hero, he's on the Argo as well. He's one of the Argonauts, and he very famously has the skin of the Nemean lion that he carries around. And one thing that really stood out to me was, oh my God, that lion skin must have smelled so bad. Like this is
it was funny.
Yeah, that thing must have reeked. And at one point, the other Argonauts or one of the other Argonauts says, like, wash that thing. It smells so bad.
And one of the other things, I mean, especially if you're someone like me who appreciates Greek mythology and has read quite a bit of it, and I know there's lots of other people like that out there, is that, you know, that journey of the Argonauts, and then just these characters particularly touch so many other sort of famous, I guess, quote unquote, mythology characters, right? Because like Achilles comes into it a little bit. You say like you have Heracles in there, but he's just a little piece, like he's not anybody that's centered, right? I mean, a lot of people probably know the most about him, but that's fine. he's over there, he's just there. I really enjoyed the little bits with Orpheus because I think he's another one. Have you watched that show Chaos that's on Netflix? Right?
Yes, I have.
And so of course, so that was like another piece in my head. I was like, oh, you know, like the Orpheus piece, and you know, obviously Chaos kind of does its own version of it, of his mythology of traveling down to get his wife back.
Yeah, and I loved writing Orpheus in this because he's kind of the divine musician.
Right.
And he, in his commitment to his art and in the divinely inspired element of it, he's a little bit of a prophet. He can see things that other people can't necessarily see. He knows stories about people because of his music that others might not necessarily know. And so there's this like very mysterious, knowledgeable element to Orpheus. And another thing that was really fun to write about him was he very famously has the romance with Eurydice. She dies, he goes into the underworld to get her out. She looks back and has to stay. I don't know if you've seen Hadestown, but
I have not seen that. No,
fantastic musical.
Yeah.
But there's also a later poetic tradition that Orpheus had a romance with one of the other Argonauts named Callias. So that's something that appears in the story as well and raises the question of what's it like to fall in love again after heartbreak?
Right, yes.
The question of loss and heartbreak and what you do after it is a major theme of the book.
It is.
And that's something I wanted to dive into, especially after Psyche and Eros, which was so much more lighter and fluffier and more linear in terms of the romance. I wanted to dive into something more human and messy. Like, most people don't spend their whole lives with one person.
Right.
What's it like to experience that loss and then to love again? So that's something I was very interested in for this book.
It's a huge theme, and really, yeah, like what does it drive you to do, right? Because I think I would say each of the characters who are experiencing the love and loss piece have different reactions to that, and like what should I be doing next, or and as you would guess, different people react different ways. Mm-hmm. There might be anger.
Yeah.
there might be I'm going to just go hide myself away.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's all sorts of things that happen in that. So I thought that was very interesting, and I really appreciated, and I won't want to spoil this because some people might not know. Like it's sort of closer to the end of your story, kind of Medea's. What happens with the end of her relationship with Jason, I guess we'll kind of talk about, but I won't spoil exactly what happens, but she has, I think, a really interesting moment with the wife of the king of Corinth, and how, they sort of, she's able to see that person as the same as herself, right? Like suffering the same way as she is, and like she hadn't been able to see that before, and then she was like, oh, this person is got the same troubles as I do too.
Exactly, yeah. Solidarity is another theme of the book as well, especially solidarity among women, because just because people are also women doesn't necessarily mean they stand up to each other or that they have much in common. But I personally think solidarity is a profoundly important value, and so I encourage my characters to think of it that way as well, even if the characters sometimes don't always do what I want them to do. It's funny how that works.
Darn those characters. And you also have like a nice little visit, which, to Circe's island, and we get to revisit with Circe for people who are fans of that character in other places.
Yeah, and some of that is the joy of adapting the Argonautica, which is like, it's such a fun poem. I wish it was as popular as the Iliad and the Odyssey. I hope it gets more popularity in the modern world. But that's something that happens in the Argonautica as well. They go to Circe's Isle for a certain type of magical treatment, shall we say. But it was very fun writing her character.
Yeah.
I had a lot of fun with interpreting Circe, especially through the lens of contemporary scholars who really emphasize how unusual she is. Living alone on her island with all of these beautiful nymphs. I rely on a lot of queer theory for writing Circe, but I had a lot of fun with her.
Yeah, and so I think the queer lens is a really valid lens to look through a lot of things through, and we already know, like that's just one of those established, right? Like the Greeks could be fluid with a lot of their tastes, and so it's kind of like, hey, there's no reason to think that some stuff wasn't happening.
Exactly, yeah, and like the Greek world, it's replete with same-sex romances, gender transformation, all of this stuff happening, which makes it such a fun thing to play with in the modern world, where we're asking similar questions and forging new identities in a similar way, but it's so nice to be able to look back at the ancient world and see that they're doing not the same thing, I definitely wouldn't say that, but something similar, and to have tools to draw on from that world.
Yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was really just great. Now, what are you working on now?
So I'm working on a couple things right now. I wrote about Persephone in Psyche and Eros. She has kind of what I would call a cameo there, but I'm interested in diving into her character more, and especially her familial relationships with her mother Demeter and her aunt Hera. And I don't really want to tell a Hades and Persephone romance. Plenty of people have done that, but I'm more interested in what it would be like to be the queen of the underworld, and what it would be like to navigate within a family that is so tangled with all kinds of drama.
Yeah, that would be a really interesting angle for sure, because you say, like, you get more into the basic myth story, right, of just like she gets stolen away and then, you know, there you are. But we don't really talk that much about what she's actually doing down there.
Yeah.
So that would actually be really interesting.
Yeah, so that's one thing I'm working on. I'm also finding myself drawn to more historical settings. You and I have discussed a bit off camera, Salem, Massachusetts, during the height of the witch trials. Also, I'm really interested in the city of Alexandria during the fall of the Roman Empire. So still deciding my next move. I've been working on a few different things.
Oh, all right. I actually also love this cover, I have to say.
Yeah, it really, when I got it from my
cover.
publishers,
Yeah.
I was very delighted. It's beautiful.
It is. It's beautiful. I like that you have, I mean, once you've read the book, you'll understand, like,
yeah,
why
you'll recognize each of the
those
creatures.
Yep, and I even just like how what they did with the patterning around.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, oh, whoever did this cover is fantastic. So I do really love it. But I would definitely recommend, especially if you're a fan of any kind of mythology or Greek mythology, definitely you're going to want to read The Witch and the Huntress. I also just love the title, actually, too. Like, I think that's just a good title.
Yeah, it really rolls off the tongue. We went through a lot of different titles. It almost felt like that meme where, you know, it's the same person but with different glasses and a different disguise. I was switching a lot of titles, but when we landed on that one, I was like, yeah, no, that is it.
Yeah, I think for sure that and it sums it up. It sums it up. So I think that's our time. So thank you so much, Luna, for coming on again. It was a pleasure once again.
And thank you, Noelle. Yeah. It's always a delight to chat with you.
Yes, and as I say again, Witch and the Huntress, pick it up. You're going to love it. And we'll see you again next time on Novel Idea.